G'day, it's Mark and welcome back to the channel. And today for something quite different, I wanted to do a video on the oldest car in my collection, the Peugeot 202 from 1938. The Peugeot 202 is what's known as a Super Mini, and it was developed and designed by the French car company Peugeot. Production of the car ran between 1938 and 1942. And then after a brief production run of 20 in early 1945, which was during the Second World War, it restarted again in mid-1946, and then it was sold up until 1949, after which it was replaced by the 203. Available body styles were a four-door saloon, a two-door cabriolet, a four-door cabriolet, and a two-door pickup, or commercial chassis. Production started in January 1938, and the car was formally launched on the 2nd of March 1938 with a dinner and presentation for the specialist press in the fashionable Bois de Boulogne district of Paris. The previous autumn at the 1937 Paris Motor Show, Peugeot had staged a massive referendum market research, activity amongst the visitors to the motor show stand to find out what customers expected from the new small car then under development. It's not clear whether there would have been still time to incorporate any of the suggestions from the public into the vehicle being launched, but the participative nature of the exercise certainly generated plenty of positive pre-launch publicity for Peugeot for the 202. The steel-bodied 202 was instantly recognisable as a Peugeot from the way that the headlights were set, as on the older 302 and 402, close together in a protected location behind the front grille. That's what I really love about the look of the car. Most customers chose the four-door Berliner or saloon version, which by 1948 came with a steel panel sliding sunroof included in the price. However, the boot or the trunk was small and could only be accessed from within the car. There was no outside boot lid. The two-seater two-door cabriolet, and I'll try and pronounce this, décapotable, which I guess means, decapitate, i.e. take the head off, take the top off, i.e. convertible, did have a separate boot lid, but cost approximately 30% more than the Berliner. And Peugeot actually was the first company to offer a factory, retractable hardtop, which, was employed later on by the 57 Ford Skyliner and then, in more modern day convertibles. So it's pretty cool that it originated back with Peugeot back in the day. Getting back to the 202, priced very closely to the Berliner was a structurally similar four-door, four-seater Berliner, which featured a full fold-away hood and which would be a feature of the Peugeot 203. Both the Peugeot 202 and the Peugeot 203 had front suicide doors, in other words, they opened backwards. Between 1947 and 1949, the manufacturer produced 3,015 timber-bodied hatch or hatchback conversions. This model cost 55% more than the Berliner and anticipated future Peugeot policy by using a slightly longer chassis than that used on other 202 versions. The extensive use of timber took the company back to a technology that it had abandoned back in 1931 when production of the Type 190 ended, and according to the manufacturer was above all a response to the shortage of sheet steel in post-war France. With the body removed, an eye-catching aspect of the 202's chassis was the positioning of the battery, located below and ahead of the radiator, itself conventionally sited ahead of the engine. This arrangement, which made inspection or replacement of the battery exceptionally easy, was made possible by the streamlined sloping front grille shared with the manufacturer's larger models introduced during the late 30s, such as the Peugeot 402 and its derivative, the 302. The 202 was powered by a 1133cc water-cooled engine, giving a maximum of 22 kilowatts at 4,000 revs, and a top speed of approximately 100 kilometres per hour or 62 miles per hour. Pretty good performance actually for a small low price car of that era. Fuel feed came via overhead valves at a time when most competitors, including the Renault, were still running a side valve power unit. Power was transferred to the rear wheels by means of a 3-speed manual transmission, which featured synchromesh on the top two ratios. The 202 also featured independent front suspension, widely held to improve both road holding and the ride of the car. And this was incorporated into the 202, meaning that this was a feature across the entire Peugeot range, a claim which couldn't be made by its chief rival Renault. Small improvements continued to be implemented until almost the point where production ended. Hydraulic brakes were a new feature for 1946. Shortly after this, the dashboard was redesigned to incorporate a very small glove box. For 1948, the wheels were embellished with chrome-plated hubcaps, and the car received redesigned hydraulic shock absorbers, which turned out to be the design recently finalised for the forthcoming new 203 model. A final fling exhibited in October 1948 for the 1949 model year was the Peugeot 202 Affairs, a reduced specification version with the heater removed and thinner tyres fitted. The 202 Affairs also lost the sliding steel sunroof, which had by now become standard fitment on the regular 202. The list price was 320,000 francs, which represented a savings of around 6% on the standard vehicle. This extreme base model was also a marketing tactic to help the company clear accumulated components prior to the release of the new model, the 203. Total production of the Peugeot 202 was 104,126 vehicles produced. I was really attracted to this vehicle. I've always liked cars with concealed headlights, things like, even the 1942 DeSoto. I think that's a really cool car. I don't have one of those, but I've always really liked these Peugeot 202s. I've seen them often in, when you look at war movies or if you look at old photos from the Second World War when the Germans invaded France in 1940. You often see in the background vehicles being used by the local French population or even cars that have been commandeered by the German forces. And so, it's just a very interesting car. I really like the Art Deco design, the styling of the car. It particularly reminds me of a scaled down version of a Chrysler Airflow, which is another car that I really, really like. I've always enjoyed the Chrysler Airflow from a styling and design perspective. And this little Peugeot 202, I'm not sure if it was influenced by the Airflow in any way, but it looks like, to me, a little bit of a scaled down version of that car. The example I've got is incredibly original. It hasn't been restored. It's got a fantastic interior. The interior it's very French with interesting door pulls. I think they're made out of Bakelite or something like that, something similar to that, little like rings almost. Really cool green upholstery, fantastic looking dashboard. The whole car is very unusual. To turn on the headlights, you turn the center of the steering wheel hub to turn the headlights on and off. It's just got some really unusual, quirky elements. Surprisingly, when I was looking to buy the car, I went for a test drive in it, and it actually gets up and goes really well. It can cruise at, 60 to 80 kilometers per hour without any problem at all. The ride is actually quite good. The synchromesh on the gearbox makes it quite drivable and usable as a vehicle. It doesn't have synchro on first, but from third to second it does. And as I said, the ride and the comfort and the general performance of the car is very, very good and well ahead of its time, I think. It's also just amazing to think that this little car, mine's I think a 1938 model, this little car would have been in France, in Paris, or in, rural France during the occupation, during the Second World War, when the Germans had invaded. And who knows, what the car got up to, who used the car, what it saw. It'd be amazing to see some period photos of the actual car, but that's probably going to be impossible these days. But yeah, I'd just like to look back at some of the older photos of the old Peugeot 202s being used by the French back in the 1930s and 40s. And, they're very distinctly French, very remarkable looking car. And I do like my American cars and my Australian cars, but I also have interest in other vehicles. And I know some people are fairly one-eyed about certain makes and models. I think you're kind of missing out there. It's a little bit like saying I like chocolate ice cream, so I don't want to try any other flavors. I think it's good to have a broad appreciation of different types of vehicles, what they can offer, what they delivered to their customers back in the day, new ideas that, whether it's stylistically or mechanical ideas their manufacturers came up with back in the day that may have been incorporated into other makes and models over subsequent years. But I just think it's all part of what makes cars interesting. Another thing I like to do when I buy a new car or a new old car is I like to acquire the workshop manuals, so I know, or parts manuals, so I know, how to fix a car or how to take something apart, or just to get a really good appreciation, exploded view of the components of the vehicle. So I went online and I bought a workshop manual, or it's a very small little, almost like a handbook, if you like, for the Peugeot 202. I'd like to know if there is a more elaborate parts book available for this car. If anyone knows, please let me know. But I bought that, and I also like to buy the original sales brochures of the vehicles that I own, plus a whole lot of other cars that I don't own, because I've always been interested in brochures, but I think they provide, an insight into how the car was marketed. Often they've got wonderful illustrations and technical information as well. So I've got the brochures on the car, on the Peugeot. Also bought some period, or close to as I could find, key rings. That also helps when you're rumbling through your keys to find the right key for the car. But I think it's also just a nice little period accessory to have with the car when you're driving it. So there's some of the things that I also purchase to go with the vehicle, and I do that with all the cars that I own. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little video on my Peugeot 202 from 1938. Really interesting little car. Anyway, please make sure you hit the like button, and also please subscribe for more episodes on a whole range of different cars. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.